The rain hammered against the windows of St. Mary's Hospital with relentless fury. Arya Carter clutched her swollen belly as another contraction ripped through her body, sending waves of pain that made her gasp. Owen Mitchell held her hand tightly, his knuckles white with worry as he helped her through the automatic doors of the emergency entrance. "We need help here," Owen called out, his voice cracking with urgency. "My fiancé is in labor, and something feels wrong." Arya squeezed her eyes shut, trying to breathe through the pain like she had learned in their birthing classes. At 38 weeks pregnant, she had expected some discomfort, but this was different. This was agony that felt like it was tearing her apart from the inside. The bleeding had started an hour ago, and Owen had immediately rushed her to the hospital despite the dangerous storm. Nurse Rebecca Cole appeared with a wheelchair, her experienced eyes quickly assessing the situation. "How far apart are the contractions?" 3 minutes, Arya managed to whisper between clenched teeth. "And the bleeding won't stop." Rebecca's expression shifted from calm professionalism to concerned efficiency. "We need to get you upstairs immediately. I'm calling for the on-call obstetrician." As they wheeled her toward the elevator, Arya felt another contraction building. This one was stronger, more vicious than the others. She cried out, her fingers digging into Owen's arm. Her sweet, patient Owen, who had come into her life 2 years ago and put the broken pieces of her heart back together. He had accepted her completely, even though she had been clear from the start that trusting again would be difficult. "You're doing great, love," Owen murmured, kissing her forehead. "Just hold on. The doctor will be here soon." The elevator doors opened on the 4th floor, and Rebecca pushed the wheelchair quickly down the corridor toward the labor and delivery unit. The fluorescent lights blurred above Arya's head as they moved. She could hear urgent voices, the beeping of machines, the shuffle of feet. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching her own life from a distance. "The patient is Arya Carter, 29 years old, 38 weeks gestation," Rebecca reported to another nurse. "Heavy bleeding, contractions 3 minutes apart, signs of fetal distress based on her symptoms. We need the doctor now." They transferred her to a hospital bed, and Owen stayed close, never letting go of her hand. A medical team swarmed around her, checking her vitals, hooking up monitors, starting an IV line. The baby's heartbeat filled the room through the fetal monitor, fast and irregular. Arya's own heart clenched with fear. "Where is the doctor?" Owen demanded, his usual gentle demeanor replaced by fierce protectiveness. "He's scrubbing in now," Rebecca assured him. "He'll be here in 2 minutes." Those 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Arya's vision started to blur at the edges. She could feel herself getting weaker, the blood loss taking its toll. Her baby, her precious baby girl that she and Owen had already named Sophie, was in danger. Nothing else mattered except making sure Sophie survived. The doors burst open, and a tall figure in surgical scrubs entered, moving with practiced urgency. Arya's eyes were closed against the pain, but she heard his voice issuing orders to the team. "Get me her charts." "What's her blood pressure? Have we typed and crossed for transfusion?" "Someone call the anesthesiologist. We may need to move to surgery." That voice. Deep, authoritative, painfully familiar. Arya's eyes flew open, and her world tilted on its axis. Dr. James Whitmore stood at the foot of her bed, his dark eyes scanning the monitors before they landed on her face. Time stopped. The bustling room faded into silence. 3 years dissolved in an instant as they stared at each other. James went completely still, his hands frozen in the act of reaching for her chart. His face, always so controlled and confident, showed pure shock. "Arya? No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, no, no. Not you. Anyone but you." Owen looked between them, confusion and alarm crossing his features. "You two know each other?" Rebecca glanced at James with sudden understanding. "Doctor, if there's a conflict of interest, we can call Dr. Patterson." But James had already recovered, his professional mask sliding back into place. "There's no time. She's hemorrhaging, and the baby is in distress. We need to operate now." He moved to Arya's side, his hands gentle despite the urgency. "Arya, I need you to listen to me. You have a placental abruption. The placenta is separating from your uterus, and we need to deliver your baby immediately via cesarean section. Do you understand?" Arya wanted to scream at him to get away from her, to call another doctor, to do anything except let him touch her. This man had destroyed her 3 years ago. He had promised her forever, had talked about starting a family, and then disappeared one morning with nothing but a cold note saying he couldn't do it anymore. He had taken her dreams and crushed them beneath his feet when he walked away. But Sophie's heartbeat on the monitor was slowing, becoming more erratic. Her baby was dying. Save her. Arya gasped, tears streaming down her face. I don't care about anything else. Just save my baby. James's jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, she saw something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. I promise you, Arya, I will save both of you. He turned to the team, all business again. Prep for emergency cesarean. Rebecca called the pediatric team and have them standing by. I want 2 units of blood ready. Move, people. Everything became a blur of motion. They were rushing her bed down the hallway toward the operating room. Owen was being handed surgical scrubs so he could accompany her. James was beside her, one hand on the rail of her bed, keeping pace. Arya, James said quietly, meant only for her ears. I know you hate me. You have every right to. But right now I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked up at him, this man who had once been her entire world. The man she had loved with every fiber of her being. The man who had abandoned her when she needed him most. His face was older now, marked by time and what looked like regret. But his eyes, those deep brown eyes that had once looked at her with such love, were now filled with determination and something else she couldn't quite name. I trust you to save my daughter, she said, her voice steady, despite the pain. That's all. James nodded, accepting her words like the punishment they were. That's enough. They pushed through the doors into the operating room. Owen was at her side instantly, his hand finding hers. I'm right here, Arya. I'm not going anywhere. The anesthesiologist approached with the epidural. Within minutes, Arya felt the pain in her lower body disappear, replaced by a strange numbness. A blue surgical drape was raised, blocking her view of her own body. She could see Owen's worried face above her, could hear the medical team moving efficiently around the room, could sense James on the other side of the drape, preparing to cut into her. We're starting now, James announced. Arya, you're going to feel some pressure, but no pain. Just breathe. She felt tugging, pulling, strange sensations that her mind couldn't quite process. Owen squeezed her hand, murmuring encouragement. The room was filled with the sounds of surgery, instruments clinking, quiet orders being given, and then, suddenly, a cry. A beautiful, angry, perfect cry. It's a girl, James said, and Arya heard the emotion cracking through his professional tone. A beautiful, healthy girl. Tears flooded Arya's eyes as a nurse brought Sophie to her, wrapped in a pink blanket. Her daughter, her miracle, was crying lustily, her tiny face scrunched up and red. Owen was crying too, kissing Arya's forehead over and over, saying, we did it, she's perfect. But Arya couldn't stop looking at James across the surgical field. He was still working, his hands moving quickly to control the bleeding, to repair the damage. And on his face, partially hidden by his surgical mask, she saw tears glistening in his eyes. Thank you, she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her over the commotion. But James looked up at that exact moment, and their eyes met. He nodded slowly, an acknowledgement that went deeper than words. Then he returned to his work, his hands steady and sure, as he fought to save her life the way he'd just saved their daughter. Their daughter. The thought hit Arya like lightning. She looked at Sophie's tiny face, then back at James. And suddenly the math aligned itself in her mind with horrifying clarity. The timeline, the dates, that one night 3.5 years ago before, James had left no. It couldn't be. But as she looked at her daughter's dark eyes, the same unusual shade as James's, at the distinctive shape of her ears, at the small dimple in her chin, Arya felt the ground shift beneath her. Owen noticed nothing, too absorbed in his new daughter. The medical team continued their work, but James's hands had stilled for just a fraction of a second, and when he looked at Sophie, really looked at her, Arya saw the realization dawn on his face too. Their eyes met again across the operating room. And in that moment, everything changed. The recovery room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors and Sophie's soft breathing from the bassinet beside Arya's bed. Owen had gone to call their families with the good news, leaving Arya alone with her thoughts and her sleeping daughter. The anesthesia was wearing off, and she could feel the dull ache where James had cut through layers of skin and muscle to bring Sophie into the world. Arya stared at her daughter, memorizing every detail of her tiny face. Sophie was perfect, absolutely perfect. With a dusting of dark hair and those striking eyes that had briefly opened to look at her mother before drifting closed again, those eyes that looked nothing like Owen's soft hazel, nothing like Arya's own blue-gray. Those eyes that were unmistakably the deep brown of James Whitmore. The door opened softly, and Arya's heart jumped. James entered, now wearing ordinary hospital scrubs instead of surgical gear. He carried a tablet with her medical charts, but his gaze went immediately to the bassinet. "You shouldn't be here," Arya said, her voice hoarse. "Surely another doctor can handle my post-operative care." "Dr. Patterson is taking over starting tomorrow," James replied quietly, moving closer. "But I needed to check on you myself. To make sure there are no complications from the surgery." He approached the bed with professional efficiency, checking her vitals, examining the foreline, reviewing the readouts from the monitors, but his movements were stiff, mechanical, and he carefully avoided looking at Sophie. "The bleeding has stopped completely," he said, making notes on the tablet. "Your blood pressure is stabilizing nicely. You'll need to stay in the hospital for 3 days for observation, but I expect a full recovery." "Thank you," Arya said formally. "You saved both of our lives tonight. It's my job, is it?" Because the James Whitmore I knew 3 years ago specialized in cardiology. He was going to be a heart surgeon, remember? When did you switch to obstetrics? James's jaw tightened. He set down the tablet and finally looked at Sophie. 2 years ago, after I left you. Why? Does it matter? Yes, Arya said, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. Yes, it matters. You left me, James. You said you couldn't handle the commitment, that you weren't ready for marriage or children or any of it. You destroyed me. And then you became a doctor who delivers babies. I need to understand why. James pulled up a chair and sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. He looked exhausted, older than his 32 years. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I couldn't forgive myself for what I did to you. Every day I thought about you wanting to start a family, but how happy you were when you talked about having children someday. And I panicked. I was a coward who ran instead of facing my fears. He looked at her then, and Arya saw genuine anguish in his eyes. I thought if I helped bring other people's children into the world, if I could give other families the joy I denied us, maybe I could atone somehow. It was stupid, I know. Nothing I do can make up for abandoning you, Arya agreed coldly. It can't. Silence fell between them, heavy with years of pain and regret. Sophie stirred in her sleep, making a small sound that drew both their gazes. Arya, James said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. What? That night, 3.5 years ago, right before I left, we were both devastated about your mother's death. You were grieving, and I was trying to comfort you, and we both had too much wine, and things happened that shouldn't have. Don't, Arya whispered. Please don't go there. But James continued, his voice gentle but insistent. The next morning, I panicked. I had already been having doubts about our marriage, about my ability to be the husband you deserved, and after that night, I felt like I had taken advantage of your grief. I hated myself. So, I ran. Like a coward, Arya said bitterly. Like a coward, he agreed. But Arya, I need to know. When did you start dating Owen? 6 months after you left. Why? James stood and walked to the bassinet, looking down at Sophie with an expression Arya couldn't read. Because when I look at this baby, I see myself. I see my eyes, my chin, the shape of my ears. And the timing adds up. Arya's breath caught in her throat. She had been trying desperately not to think about it, not to do the math, not to acknowledge the terrifying possibility. But hearing James say it out loud made it real. "It doesn't matter," she said, but her voice shook. "Owen is her father. He's been with me through the entire pregnancy. He built her crib with his own hands. He painted clouds on her nursery ceiling. He talks to her every night through my belly. He is her father in every way that matters, except biologically. Biology doesn't make someone a parent, James. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up does. All the things you never could do." The words hit their mark. James flinched as if she had struck him. "You're right. But if Sophie is my daughter, I have a right to know. She has a right to know. She has a right to a stable, loving home with two parents who actually want her," Arya shot back. "Which is exactly what Owen and I are giving her." Before James could respond, the door opened and Owen walked back in, his face glowing with happiness. "I just talked to everyone. Your sister is crying happy tears, and my parents are already on their way from Colorado. They'll be here tomorrow to meet their granddaughter." He stopped, noticing James. "Oh, doctor. Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine," James said smoothly, his professional mask sliding back into place. "I was just completing my post-surgical check. Arya is recovering well." Owen moved to the bed, taking Arya's hand and kissing it. "Thank goodness. I was so scared tonight. When I saw all that blood, I thought I was going to lose both of you." "Your quick thinking saved them," James said, and Arya heard something strained in his voice. "Getting her to the hospital so quickly made all the difference. I couldn't have lived with myself if something had happened to them," Owen said, looking at Arya with such pure love that her heart ached. "They're my whole world." James stood abruptly. "I should let you both rest. Dr. Patterson will take over your care tomorrow morning. If you need anything during the night, the nurses know to call me." "Wait," Owen said suddenly. "Dr. Whitmore, I never properly thanked you. What you did tonight, saving both of them under such difficult circumstances, I'm forever grateful. Truly." Extended his hand. James looked at it for a long moment, then shook it firmly. "You have a beautiful family. Take care of them." As James moved toward the door, Sophie began to cry, a healthy, lusty wail that filled the room. Owen immediately went to the bassinet, carefully lifting his daughter and bringing her to Arya. "I think someone's hungry," he said with a gentle laugh. James stopped at the door, his hand on the handle. Arya watched him watching them, this picture of domestic happiness that could have been his if he had been brave enough to stay. She saw a longing flash across his face, quickly suppressed. "James," she said quietly. He turned to look at her. "Thank you. For everything you did tonight?" He nodded once, then left without another word as Owen helped Arya position Sophie for nursing. Chattering excitedly about all the things they would teach their daughter, Arya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Owen assumed they were tears of joy, and she let him believe it. But the truth was far more complicated. She looked down at Sophie, who had latched on and was nursing contentedly, her tiny hand resting against Arya's chest. Owen sat beside them, his hand on Arya's shoulder. Already the perfect father. But those eyes, Sophie's beautiful dark eyes that were now closed in contentment, belonged to someone else entirely, and Arya had no idea what to do about it. Over the next 2 days, Arya tried to focus on recovery and bonding with Sophie. Owen barely left her side, taking to fatherhood with natural ease. He changed diapers, learned to swaddle, walked the hospital corridors at 3 a.m. when Sophie was fussy, and looked at his daughter with such devotion that Arya wanted to weep. Dr. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s, handled Arya's medical care competently. She made no mention of James, and Arya was grateful for the distance. But late at night, when Owen had finally dozed off in the uncomfortable hospital chair, Arya found herself thinking about James's words. "If Sophie is my daughter, I have a right to know." Did he? Did a man who had abandoned her earn any rights at all? And what about Sophie's rights? Didn't she deserve to know her biological father, if James was indeed that person? But more importantly, what about Owen? Sweet, loyal Owen, who had never done anything except love her completely. How could she tell him that the daughter he already adored might not be his? It would destroy him. On the third day, As Arya was preparing for discharge, there was a knock on the door. James entered, and Arya's heart sank. Owen had gone down to bring the car around. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Dr. Patterson already cleared me for discharge." "I know," James said. "I needed to see you before you left. Alone." He closed the door and moved closer, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "Arya, I've thought about nothing else for the past 3 days. I need to know the truth. I brought consent forms for a paternity test. It's completely confidential, just a simple cheek swab. Results in 48 hours. Arya stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. "And if you are her biological father, what then?" "Then we figure it out together. I'm not trying to take her from you or from Owen. I just need to know why. So you can ease your conscience? So you can feel like less of a failure?" "No," James said firmly. "So I can do the right thing. If Sophie is my daughter, I want to be part of her life. Not as a replacement for Owen, but as someone who cares, who can provide for her, who can be there for her." "Like you were there for me?" Arya asked bitterly. The arrow found its mark. James looked away, his jaw working. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. But this isn't about me, Arya. This is about a child who deserves to know the truth about where she came from." Arya looked at Sophie, asleep in her carrier, blissfully unaware of the adults arguing over her fate. She thought about Owen, about the life they had built together, about the future they had planned. And she thought about that night 3.5 years ago, when grief and loneliness and too much wine had led to one moment of weakness that might have created the perfect little person sleeping beside her. "I need time," she finally said. "I need to talk to Owen first. He deserves to know everything before any tests are done. Are you going to tell him?" "I don't know," Arya admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to tell the man I love that the baby he's been preparing for might not be his. It will break his heart." James moved closer, and for a moment Arya saw a flash of the man she had once loved. "Owen loves you, Arya. That's obvious. And he loves Sophie. If he really is the man you think he is, he'll find a way to handle this. And if he can't, if this destroys us, then I'll be here," James said quietly. "For both of you. I failed you once. I won't do it again." The door opened and Owen walked back in, slightly out of breath. Cars all loaded. "You ready to take our girl home?" Arya looked between the two men, one who had given her heartbreak and one who had given her healing. One who might be Sophie's biological father, and one who was already her father in every meaningful way. "Yes," she said, making her decision. "Let's go home." As Owen carefully picked up Sophie's carrier and headed for the door. Chattering about the welcome home banner her sister had made, Arya paused beside James. "1 week," she whispered. "Give me 1 week to figure out how to handle this. Then we'll do the test." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. 1 week, and Arya. "Whatever happens, whatever you decide, I just want you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. If I could go back and change it, I would. But you can't," Arya said softly. "None of us can change the past. We can only decide what to do with the future." She walked away without looking back, following Owen and Sophie toward the life she had built from the ashes of her broken heart. But she could feel James watching her go. She knew that the next week would determine everything. The truth had a way of coming out eventually. The only question was whether their fragile happiness could survive it. The week passed too, as quickly and too slowly at the same time. Arya spent her days caring for Sophie, feeding her every 3 hours, changing countless diapers, and marveling at how someone so tiny could completely take over her life. Owen was a constant presence, working from home so he could help with their daughter. He sang silly songs while changing diapers, did exaggerated voices when reading board books to a baby too young to understand, and fell asleep most nights with Sophie on his chest. Watching him be a father was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Every time he called Sophie, "my little girl." Every time he posted a photo on social media with the caption, "my daughter," Arya felt her stomach twist with guilt. She hadn't told him about her conversation with James. She hadn't mentioned the paternity test. She kept hoping that if she just waited long enough, The problem would somehow resolve itself. But on the sixth day, as she sat in the nursery at 2 a.m. feeding Sophie while Owen slept, Arya knew she couldn't keep living in this limbo. Sophie deserved better. Owen deserved better. Even James deserved better than this uncertainty. She looked down at her daughter, who was nursing contentedly, her tiny hand wrapped around Arya's finger. Those dark eyes opened briefly, unfocused but alert, and Arya felt her heart break all over again. She saw James in that face, in those eyes, in the delicate arch of Sophie's eyebrows. But she also saw herself, saw the way Sophie's mouth curved, saw her own mother's chin. And when Sophie finished nursing and Owen appeared in the doorway, sleepy and rumpled, reaching for his daughter with such natural affection, Arya saw him there too. In the way he held her, in the gentle songs he hummed, in the future they were already building together. "Can't sleep?" Owen asked softly, taking Sophie and laying her against his shoulder to burp her. "Just thinking," Arya replied. "About what?" This was the moment. She could tell him everything right now, could explain about James and the paternity test and the possibility that Sophie might not be his biological daughter. Or she could stay silent, could let Owen continue believing in the family they had created. "About how lucky we are," she said, choosing the coward's path one more time. "About how perfect she is," Owen smiled, kissing Sophie's head. "We are lucky. She's everything I ever dreamed of. You're everything I ever dreamed of." After he went back to bed with Sophie settled in her bassinet, Arya sat alone in the dark nursery and cried silently. She had until tomorrow to make her decision. Tomorrow was day 7, and she had promised James an answer. The next morning, Arya woke up knowing what she had to do. While Owen was in the shower, she texted James a single word: "Today."
Yes.
His response came immediately: "I'll come to you." "What time?" 2 p.m. "Owen has a faculty meeting at school. I'll be there." The hours crawled by. Arya went through the motions of caring for Sophie, but her mind was elsewhere. She had made a decision, one that terrified her, but felt right nonetheless. She just hoped she had the courage to see it through. At 1:45 p.m., Owen kissed her goodbye, completely unaware that their lives were about to change forever. "I should be back by 4, he said. "Call me if you need anything." 15 minutes later, James arrived. He looked different in civilian clothes, more like the man she had married and less like the doctor who had saved her life. He carried a small medical kit, presumably containing the paternity test. "Thank you for seeing me," he said formally, standing awkwardly in the living room he had never been to before. "Sit down," Arya said. "We need to talk before we do any test." James sat on the edge of the sofa while Arya settled into the rocking chair, Sophie asleep in her arms. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, years of history and pain hanging between them. "I've spent this whole week thinking about what's best for Sophie," Arya began. "Not what's best for me, or for you, or even for Owen. Just what's best for her. That's all I want too," James said quietly. "I know you do. And I know that you think knowing the biological truth is what's best. But James, I need you to understand something. Owen is Sophie's father. He has been from the moment I told him I was pregnant. He never once questioned whether she was his. He never asked about timing or dates. He just accepted her completely." "I understand that, but let me finish," Arya interrupted. "That night, 3.5 years ago, was a mistake. We were both grieving my mother, both drowning in pain, and we made a choice that we shouldn't have made. The next morning, you left. You didn't know I might be pregnant because I didn't know either. I didn't find out until 6 weeks later." James went very still. "You were pregnant when I left?" "I found out a month after you disappeared. I tried to call you, tried to reach you through your friends, but you had blocked me everywhere. You made it very clear you wanted nothing to do with me." "God," James breathed, his face going pale. "Arya, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't. But it doesn't change what happened next. I was alone, pregnant, and terrified. I lost the baby at 12 weeks. The words hung in the air like stones. James looked like he had been punched in the stomach. "You had a miscarriage? Yes, and it nearly destroyed me. I had already lost my mother, lost you, and then I lost the baby too. I spent 3 months barely able to function. My sister moved in with me because she was afraid I would hurt myself. Tears were streaming down James's face now. Arya, I'm so sorry. If I had known, if I had been there, but you weren't there, Arya said firmly, but not unkindly. And eventually, I had to learn to live with that. I had to find a way to heal. That's when I met Owen. He helped me put the pieces back together. He loved me even when I told him I might never be able to trust anyone fully again. He was patient and kind and everything you weren't. I know, James whispered. I know he's a better man than I am. Arya shifted Sophie in her arms, looking down at her daughter's peaceful face. 6 months ago, when I found out I was pregnant again, I was terrified. Terrified of losing another baby, terrified of being left alone again. But Owen was there for every moment. Every appointment, every ultrasound, every midnight craving. He earned the right to be Sophie's father. So you don't want to do the test, James said. And Arya heard the defeat in his voice. I didn't say that. James looked up, confused. Then what are you saying? Arya took a deep breath, knowing her next words would change everything. I'm saying that I need to tell Owen the truth first. About that night, about the possibility that Sophie might be yours, about the paternity test. He deserves to know before we do anything. If he can't handle it, if he leaves you, then that's a risk I have to take. Because building a family on lies isn't fair to anyone, especially not to Sophie. She deserves parents who are honest with each other, even when the truth is hard. James nodded slowly. When will you tell him? Tonight? After he comes home from his meeting? And the test? If Owen agrees, we'll do it. But James, you need to understand something. Even if you are Sophie's biological father, Owen is still her dad. I won't let you push him out of her life. If you want to be part of this family, it has to be on terms that work for all of us. I'm not trying to replace him, James said earnestly. I just want to know my daughter, if she is my daughter. I want to be there for her, to support her, to watch her grow up. I don't need to be called Dad or have my name on the birth certificate. I just want to be someone in her life. That's between you and Owen to figure out, Arya said. If he decides he can handle this, if he agrees to move forward, then the three of us will have to find a way to make this work. But Owen's feelings and opinions matter just as much as yours. It's more than mine, James corrected. He's earned that right. I haven't. Before Arya could respond, they heard a key in the front door. Both of them froze. Owen walked in, stopping dead when he saw James sitting in their living room. What's going on? Owen asked slowly, his eyes moving between them. Why is Dr. Whitmore here? Arya's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. This wasn't how she had planned it. She was supposed to have time to prepare, to figure out the right words. But maybe there were no right words for something like this. Owen, she said, her voice shaking, please sit down. There's something I need to tell you. Owen set down his briefcase, his expression growing wary. You're scaring me, Arya. What's this about? It's about Sophie, James said quietly. And it's about Arya and me, and something that happened a long time ago. For the next 30 minutes, Arya told Owen everything. About her marriage to James, about the night they had spent together right before he left, about the miscarriage she had never mentioned, about the timing of Sophie's conception, and the possibility that James might be her biological father. She watched Owen's face cycle through shock, hurt, anger, and finally, kind of numb acceptance. When she finished, silence filled the room. Sophie chose that moment to wake up and start fussing. Arya moved to comfort her, but Owen stood up suddenly. Let me, he said, his voice tight. He took Sophie from Arya's arms and walked to the window. Holding his daughter and staring out at the street, James and Arya sat in awful silence, waiting. Finally, Owen spoke without turning around. That night we had our first date. You told me you had been married before. You said it ended badly, that your ex-husband left you during a difficult time. You never told me about the pregnancy or the miscarriage? No, Arya said quietly. I should have. I was afraid you would see me as too broken, too damaged. In the timing of Sophie's conception, Owen turned to face her, and Arya saw tears on his cheeks. Did you know? Have you known all along that she might not be mine? No, Arya said firmly. I honestly believed she was yours. The dates aligned with our honeymoon. But when I saw her eyes, when I saw certain features, I started to wonder. And then James noticed too. Owen looked at James for the first time since Arya had started her explanation. You think Sophie is your daughter? I think it's possible, James said carefully. The timing matches, and there are certain physical similarities. But I don't know for sure. That's why I brought a paternity test, but I told Arya I wouldn't do anything without talking to you first. How noble of you, Owen said bitterly. The man who abandoned his wife when she needed him most suddenly wants to play father. You're right, James said, not flinching from the accusation. I was a coward and a failure. I don't deserve to be anyone's father. But if Sophie is mine biologically, I want to try. Not to replace you, because I could never do what you've done for them. Just to be present in whatever way Arya and you decide is appropriate. Owen looked down at Sophie, who had fallen back asleep in his arms. She's my daughter. I've been her father since before she was born. I don't care about biology or DNA. She's mine. I know she is, James said softly, and nothing will change that. But doesn't she deserve to know the truth? When she's older, when she asks questions about her heritage or her medical history. Don't you want to be able to give her honest answers? Owen was quiet for a long time, gently rocking Sophie. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I'm angry. I'm hurt that Arya didn't tell me about that night sooner. I'm terrified that if we do this test and it comes back positive, everything will change. That somehow, I'll be less her father. You could never be less her father, Arya said, standing and moving toward him. You are the one who has been here for every moment. You are the one who loves her unconditionally. Biology doesn't change that. But it matters, Owen said. If James is her biological father, he has rights. He could ask for custody or visitation. He could sue us. I would never do that, James said firmly. I'll sign any legal document you want, waiving all parental rights if that makes you comfortable. I'm not here to disrupt Sophie's life or your family. I just want to know the truth, and if she is mine, I want the chance to know her as she grows up. Maybe as a family friend or an uncle figure, whatever you're comfortable with. Owen looked at Arya. What do you want? I want to do the right thing, Arya said honestly. For Sophie, for you, and yes, even for James, I think we should do the test. I think we need to know for sure, one way or another. And then we can make decisions based on facts instead of suspicions. And if he is her father? Owen asked, his voice breaking. If I've been raising another man's child, then you've been doing something beautiful and selfless, Arya said, taking his free hand. You've been loving a child who needed a father? That doesn't diminish what you are to her. If anything, it makes it more meaningful, because you chose her. You chose to love her without conditions or qualifications. Owen looked at Sophie, then at Arya, then finally at James. We do this test. And it comes back that you're her biological father. I need you to promise me something. Anything, James said immediately. You will never try to take her from us. You will never confuse her by trying to be her dad. I am her dad. You can be in her life, but only if it doesn't hurt her or make her question who her real family is. I promise, James said solemnly. You have my word. Owen looked at Arya one more time. Are you sure about this? I'm sure that living with doubt would be worse than knowing the truth, no matter what that truth is. Owen said finally, his shoulders sagging. Let's do the test. James pulled out the paternity test kit, a simple collection of cotton swabs. The process took less than 5 minutes. A swab from James's cheek, a swab from Sophie's tiny mouth while she slept peacefully through it all. James packaged everything carefully and promised the results would be ready in 48 hours. I'll call you as soon as I have them, he said, standing to leave. And thank you, Owen. I know how hard this must be for you. Just remember your promises, Owen said quietly. Sophie comes first. Always. Always, James agreed. After he left, Arya and Owen sat together on the couch in silence. Sophie was between them and her bouncer, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding around her. "I'm sorry," Arya finally said. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about that night sooner. I'm sorry for all of this. I wish you had trusted me enough to tell me," Owen said. "But I understand why you didn't. I just need time to process all of this." "I love you," Arya said. "That hasn't changed. You are Sophie's father, and you're going to be an amazing dad to her, no matter what some test says." Owen pulled her close, and they held each other while Sophie cooed happily between them. Whatever the test results showed, they would face it together. The next 48 hours were the longest of Arya's life. Owen went to work but came home early. They barely talked about the test, instead focusing on Sophie and the routines of new parenthood. But the tension was there, humming beneath every conversation, every shared glance. On the second afternoon, James called. Arya put him on speaker so Owen could hear too. "The results are in," James said, his voice carefully neutral. "I'm looking at them right now." Arya's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Owen reached over and took her hand, squeezing tight. Sophie was asleep in her swing, peaceful and perfect. "And?" Arya asked when the silence stretched too long. James took a deep breath. "The probability of paternity is 99.9%. Sophie is my biological daughter." The words seemed to echo in the room. Arya felt Owen's hand tighten on hers almost painfully. She looked at him and saw tears streaming down his face. "Owen," she started, but he held up his other hand. "I need a minute," he said, his voice choked. He stood up and walked out of the room, and Arya heard the bedroom door close. "Is he okay?" James asked through the phone. "I don't know," Arya admitted. "Give us some time, James. This is a lot to process." "Of course. Take all the time you need." "And Arya, I meant what I said. I'm not here to disrupt Sophie's life. Owen is her father in every way that matters." After hanging up, Arya sat alone with Sophie, who had woken up and was looking around with those dark eyes that were now confirmed to be James's. She picked up her daughter and held her close, breathing in her baby smell, feeling the solid weight of her. 20 minutes later, Owen emerged from the bedroom. His eyes were red and puffy, but his expression was calmer. "I've been thinking," he said, sitting down next to Arya. "I realized something. I fell in love with you knowing you had a past, knowing you had been hurt before. I chose to love you anyway, with all your history and complications. And I fell in love with Sophie the moment I knew she existed. Before I ever saw her face or knew anything about her, I chose to be her father." "Owen," Arya whispered, fresh tears falling. "The test results don't change how I feel. They don't change the fact that I was there for her first breath, her first diaper change, all those middle-of-the-night feedings. Biology gave her life, but I'm choosing to give her love. That's what makes me her dad." Arya threw her arms around him. Sophie pressed between them. "I love you so much. I love you too. Both of you. And I'm not going anywhere." He pulled back and looked at her seriously. "But we do need to figure out what to do about James. He is Sophie's biological father, and he seems genuine about wanting to be in her life in a healthy way. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Sophie is lucky. She gets to have me as her dad, and she gets to have James as someone else who cares about her. Maybe we call him Uncle James. Maybe he comes to birthdays and holidays. We set clear boundaries, but we don't shut him out completely. Because someday Sophie will want to know where she came from, and I want to be able to tell her that we did the right thing." "You're an incredible man," Arya said in wonder. "I'm just a man who loves his family," Owen corrected, "and wants what's best for his daughter." Over the next few months, they worked out an arrangement with James. He visited once a week, always with both Arya and Owen present. He brought gifts sometimes, but nothing excessive. He held Sophie and talked to her and marveled at every tiny developmental milestone. But he never overstepped, never tried to be more than what he was, a caring adult in Sophie's life. Owen remained Sophie's father in every way. He was the one who got up for 3 a.m. feedings, who changed the explosive diapers, who sang her to sleep when she was fussy. James was present, but Owen was her parent. 6 months after Sophie's birth, the 3 adults sat down together while Sophie napped. "I want to thank you both," James said. for giving me this chance to know my daughter, for trusting me despite everything I did wrong. I know I don't deserve it. You're right, you don't, Owen said bluntly. But then he smiled slightly. But Sophie deserves to have all the love and support she can get. And you're trying to be better. That counts for something. I am trying, James agreed. Every day I'm trying to be the man I should have been years ago. And I owe that to both of you for showing me what real commitment looks like. Arya looked between the two men in her life, so different but both important in their own ways. We're all just trying to do what's best for Sophie. That's all any parent can do. She's lucky to have you both, James said, looking at Arya and Owen together. You're giving her something I never could have given her on my own. A real family built on love and choice and commitment. As Sophie grew, she thrived surrounded by people who loved her. Owen was the one she called Dada, the one she reached for when she was scared or hurt. But James was there too, familiar presence who made her giggle and brought her books and never asked for more than she could give. On Sophie's first birthday, they all gathered together with extended family and friends. As Arya watched Owen help Sophie smash her first birthday cake while James took pictures from the side. Content in his role, she felt a profound sense of peace. Their family didn't look like what she had imagined. It was complicated and unconventional and required constant communication and grace from everyone involved. But it worked because they all put Sophie first, because they chose love over ego, because they were willing to redefine what family could mean. What are you thinking about? Owen asked later that night as they cleaned up after the party. I'm thinking that sometimes the broken pieces come together to make something even more beautiful than the original plan, Arya said. Owen pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Sophie has 3 parents who love her. That's not broken. That's abundance. And he was right. What had started as potential tragedy had transformed into something unexpected and beautiful. James had learned that being a parent meant more than biology. Owen had proven that real fatherhood was about choice and presence. And Arya had learned that truth, even painful truth, was the foundation on which strong families were built. As they watched Sophie sleep that night, surrounded by birthday cards from everyone who loved her, Arya knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. All 3 of them, united by their love for one extraordinary little girl. The past couldn't be changed. James would always be the man who left, and that couldn't be undone. But the future was still being written, and they were writing it together with honesty, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment to doing what was best for Sophie. That was the choice that changed everything. Not the choice to do the paternity test, but the choice to let love define their family instead of biology. The choice to forgive and move forward. The choice to be bigger than their own hurt and fear. And in the end, that choice gave Sophie something precious. A family built not on accident or obligation, but on the deliberate daily decision to love her completely.